New York looked normal that morning. People were going to work. So was I. Not long after, everything changed. August 18th changed things in Nashville. My sister and I were fine, but things at home were not. She and her husband had grown distant, and with me still there, the house felt smaller every day. My brother-in-law's father saw it too. He had a contact in New York, an insurance office. They needed someone good with numbers. He gave me a recommendation, and I decided to go. Getting to New York took time. One train, then another. By early September, I was there. New city, new job. My parents had given me a small apartment, nothing fancy, but it was mine. The recommendation helped. Walter Bennett gave me a chance. At first, I checked claims, dates, numbers, payments. I wanted to earn my place, so I stayed late. Some nights, I was the last one there. After a while, one name kept coming back, Charles Whitmore. Then I noticed another, Edward Collins. The same assessor again and again. Different claims, same two names. That was enough to make me look closer. Then something else started showing up. A card. The Marlowe Club. Same address, in more than one file. It wasn't a place you just walked into. Private, expensive, members only. So I took the card to Patrick.
That's the big leagues.
He knew
Then
people,
get me in, please.
and he knew how to get me inside. Getting inside was one thing. Looking like I belonged there was another. I couldn't walk in dressed for the office. So I went home, washed up, changed, tried on a few dresses. The trick wasn't to stand out. It was to look like no one should question me. The Marlowe Club was exactly what I expected. Expensive, quiet, careful. Different rooms, different faces, but the same kind of people. Then I heard a name I knew, Samuel Rosen. I had seen it before, in the claims. That was enough to keep listening.
The printer, Samuel Rosen, refused the revised figures.
Rosen didn't say much. He didn't have to. The damage was real. His numbers matched. What didn't match was the paperwork around him. Whitmore, Collins, again.
I told them the damage was real.
I had enough to keep digging, so I headed back to the office. I was almost back at the office. Wall Street was busy. Just another workday. People moving, cars passing, horses in the street. Then, at 12:01, came the blast. The morning was over. By afternoon, everyone in New York knew. Extra editions were everywhere, on the streets, in offices, in bars. People kept asking the same thing. Who did it? No one had an answer. Not yet. Monday morning, September 20th. The office was full before we even opened. Claims, questions, new policies. Everyone wanted protection. For themselves, for their shops, for their businesses. We could barely keep up. Walter even brought in his brother just to help with the paperwork. And somewhere in that pile, the same pattern started showing up again. I compared the new claims with the old files. Same wording, same names. Whitmore, Collins. By October 5th, I had enough. Walter saw the pattern too. When I went to Whitmore's office, he was gone. Most of his papers were gone too. But on the floor, he had left one thing behind: the iron circle. Back at the office, Rosen's claim was approved. 2 suspicious claims were stopped. The honest one was paid. Walter thought New York was getting dangerous. The company needed someone in Tulsa. So I accepted. I told Patrick I was leaving. Then I boarded another train. I never learned who left the wagon on Wall Street, but I learned who tried to profit from what followed. Next stop, Tulsa.
Big night in the yard, huh, Alonzo?
November
Here we've got some extra
13th,
mail cars coming through.
1920. Burlington train number 8 pulled into Council Bluffs. Registered mail on board, worth millions. 4 young men had a simple plan: distract the engineer, get into the mail car, take the valuable sacks. A Maxwell sedan was waiting a few blocks away, and within minutes, they were gone. A few weeks earlier, I brought everything I'd found in New York
These
to
files
Burns's
seem to be in
newsroom.
order.
Let me look.
Notes,
I have indicated
names,
the changes here.
documents that still
I see
didn't
what
add
you
up.
mean. This approach should work
His
perfectly.
assistant
I
took
agree
the
with
file.
your assessment.
Burns
I
gave me
appreciate your
something
time
else.
today.
Of course.
His card
Here is my contact.
and a reason for people to hear me out. I was heading west. Iowa wasn't part of the plan. Council Bluffs was just another stop. Until it wasn't. The Marlowe Club. I knew it from New York. That's what made me stay. Not the robbery. The club.
What happened here?
The Burlington mail train was robbed last night.
By then, the railroad men were already asking questions of their own. I didn't know who they were looking at
Were you
yet,
working here last night? Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
and I wasn't trying to solve their robbery. I wanted to know why the Marlowe Club had shown up here.
A room, please?
Certainly, ma'am. How long will you be staying?
A few days.
Here is your key.
Tulsa wasn't expecting me until December 10th, so I had a little time. Enough to stay and ask a few questions. I needed Burns. One call from him, and people were a little more willing to talk.
I understand. I'll take care of it. All right. Thank you.
Council Bluffs was no backwater. In 1920, it was one of the railroad crossroads of the country. Broadway was busy, the hotels were full, and the city kept moving. By the park, by the station, by the streetcars, you could feel how much passed through this place.
These are the transfer records.
Thank you.
The station master didn't give me answers. He gave me records, and records were better. They gave me something clearer than rumor, a trail. Meanwhile, Council Bluffs just kept moving. Restaurants were busy, shops were open, people came and went. And somewhere in all of that, the men from the train were blending right in, eating, shopping, spending money. Nothing flashy, just enough to look like everybody else. And some of what they couldn't spend, they tried to make disappear. Bonds, letters, records. Part of the paper trail went into the fire.
One sack was still there,
Where exactly? You were here?
right by the engine. Merle was talking to me.
On paper, it was a route. Out there, it became real. By nightfall, I needed one more piece, something separate, something that could confirm the pattern.
What is it you're looking for?
I'm tracing a financial route. A registered consignment connected to Marlowe.
Let me see. This matches our record.
Glenn's records gave me that. A separate trail pointing the same way. Different records, different sources, same direction. And then, see Whitmore. It didn't prove Whitmore planned the robbery, but it did prove one thing. His money had a route. Council Bluffs had given me what I needed. The trail didn't end in Iowa. It kept going west. So did I. By sunrise, a whole neighborhood was burning. Greenwood, Tulsa, Oklahoma. One of the most successful black business districts in America was disappearing block by block. But when I first came to Tulsa, none of this had happened yet. It was December of 1920. Just weeks earlier, I'd been in Council Bluffs, Iowa, following the trail left behind by that $3.5 million mail train robbery. The trail wasn't finished, but New York had already sent me somewhere else. Tulsa, a new office, a new job, a city I barely knew. I arrived with one suitcase, a few papers, and one name I still couldn't put away. Whitmore. At the time, I thought Tulsa was just another stop. I had no idea what I was about to see. The office was easier to understand than the city. Helen Parker showed me where everything was, the files, the desks, who handled what. And after a few weeks, Mr. Mercer stopped checking every page I put in front of him. I took that as a good sign. Then February reminded me that Oklahoma could change fast. A winter storm hit Tulsa hard. Snow buried the streets, streetcars slowed, and for a while, the whole city seemed to stop. So did I. At home, I cooked, drank too much coffee. And one night, I decided I was tired of looking exactly the way I had when I arrived. So, I changed it. By March, the snow was giving way, the office was busy again, and Mercer handed me a new assignment.
Greenwood offers so many opportunities for us. Most of these properties are Black-owned. Good morning, Mrs. Carter. Our community is
Greenwood.
growing every day.
That was where I met Evelyn Carter. And that was when Tulsa started becoming more than just another city on my route. Greenwood had no shortage of strong names, men who would help build the place, and men whose names carried weight far beyond a single block. Dr. A.C. Jackson was one of them, a respected surgeon, a man people trusted. And then there was O.W. Gurley, one of the men who helped turn Greenwood into a district of black businesses, black property, and black ambition. By the spring of 1921, that success was visible everywhere you looked. Shops were open, cars moved steadily through the streets. People were working, buying, building, and planning. Some of the most important figures in the district were still moving through those streets as if the future were secure. It wasn't. But in those days, no one could see the end coming clearly yet. Life went on. Evelyn knew the neighborhood block by block. Sometimes she was guiding residents, sometimes business visitors, sometimes people who had simply come to see Greenwood for themselves. And for me, the work stayed practical. Policies, buildings, inventory, valuation. Evelyn took me inside one insured business after another. She checked the ledger against the stock on hand, and I wrote down what the company would need, the condition of the property, the contents, and the value. At the time, it felt like ordinary work. Later, I would understand just how much of that world was about to be lost. And then, there it was again. Whitmore. I wrote it down, but before I could learn much more, Tulsa gave me something else to follow. May 30th, 1921. At the Drexel Building downtown, a young black shoe shiner named Dick Rowland entered an elevator operated by a young woman named Sarah Page. Something happened inside. Exactly what has never been clear. But Rowland left the building quickly, and by the next day, a small, uncertain incident had become something much larger. By May 31st, the story was moving faster than anyone could control it. Newspapers were being printed, copies moved into the streets, and with every conversation, the story seemed to change. Dick Rowland had been arrested. Sheriff Willard McCullough kept him inside the courthouse and refused to simply turn him over to the people gathering outside. In Greenwood, the fear was obvious. The word people kept hearing was lynching. Some of the men who responded were black veterans of the First World War. They went downtown to make sure Rowland was protected. They were told he was safe, and they left. But as evening came, the crowd around the courthouse kept growing. The facts were getting harder to find, and the fear was getting easier to feel. Businesses began closing. People watched the streets. The city felt different. Then came the first fires, and after that, everything moved quickly. Greenwood came under attack. Homes, businesses, and entire blocks burned through the night. There were also reports of aircraft above the district. Some accounts later described objects being dropped from the planes. Exactly what happened in the air and what role those aircraft played remains disputed. By the morning of June 1st, the Greenwood I had come to know was almost impossible to recognize. I went looking for Evelyn. I found her alive. For a moment, that was enough. Then came the work after the fire. Registration tables, temporary shelters, food, medical care, stacks of names and papers. Maurice Willows helped organize the Red Cross relief effort, and B.C. Franklin worked from a temporary tent office, helping residents fight for their property and their right to rebuild. Then the insurance claims began arriving. Back at Metropolitan Indemnity, Mercer and I opened one file after another. Property losses, business losses, homes, and then the clauses. Riot, civil disturbance, exclusions. Too many people had paid for insurance, only to discover that the words inside the policy could matter more than what they had lost. Greenwood had been damaged in a matter of hours. Recovering from it would take much longer. When I finally left Tulsa, I was leaving a city I no longer saw the same way. And somewhere in my papers, one name was still there. Whitmore. Tulsa was behind me. That trail wasn't. Welch, West Virginia, August 1st, 1921. Sid Hatfield and
Let's
Ed
hurry.
Chambers were walking toward the McDowell County Courthouse with their wives. They talked for a moment, then kept walking. And then, the gunshots. Both men were killed. Their wives were there, and for a few moments, people around the courthouse barely seemed to understand what had happened. Some cried, some just stood there. Others started moving, looking for answers. Then the story left Welch. Newsrooms picked it up, telephones rang, typewriters started moving, and the names, Hatfield and Chambers, spread through the coal fields. But this wasn't a peaceful region suddenly turning angry. The tension was already here. Miners had spent years fighting over pay, working conditions, union rights, and the power coal companies held over everyday life. The killings didn't start that fight. They pushed an old conflict even harder. Men gathered, they read the news, they talked, and soon, more and more miners were moving together, into the roads, into the valleys, and eventually, into the mountains. My part of the story started a few days earlier, late July. I was on a train to Charleston with a new assignment from Metropolitan Indemnity. The company was expanding fast, and my job was changing with it. I was traveling now, checking branch records, reviewing claims, and visiting insured properties myself. Charleston was supposed to be another work stop, so I got off the train, picked up my folder, and started walking. The office gave me the paperwork. The coal country gave me the rest. Claims, mine properties, equipment, housing, rail lines. Part of my day was spent behind a desk. The rest, I spent seeing what those papers actually described. The mines weren't just places where men worked. Whole communities depended on them. Homes, stores, families, transportation. And almost everything seemed connected to the same system. You could read that in a report, but seeing it was different. Back at the office, I started noticing small things in the records. A name, an address, a business connection I'd seen before. Then the news from Welch reached Charleston. Hatfield and Chambers were dead. By then, the coal fields were already reacting. Meetings filled up. Men wanted answers. Frank Keeney and other union organizers were reading reports, discussing demands, and deciding what came next. And while all of that was happening, I kept going through my own papers. One name kept coming back. Whitmore. Another record, another connection, another state. I still didn't know the whole story, but I knew enough to keep that file open. Outside the office, things kept getting bigger. More miners were gathering. Meetings continued. Keeney and the union were still pushing their demands, but the answer people wanted wasn't coming. Then men started gathering at Marmette. At first, small groups, then dozens, then hundreds more. I passed through the area on company work and saw it happening myself. Men arriving with bags, blankets, coats. Some talking, some sitting quietly, some just watching the road. It didn't look like an army, not yet. It looked like working men, waiting to decide what came next. Then Mother Jones arrived. By that time, Her name was known across the labor movement. But she wasn't there to send them forward. She was trying to stop them. She spoke. The miners listened. Some argued. Some stayed quiet. But they didn't leave. More men kept coming, and by evening, the gathering felt different. This wasn't just another meeting anymore. They were getting ready to move. On August 24th, the march began. Thousands of miners started moving toward Logan County. Not all in one perfect line, but steadily through roads, valleys, and mountain communities. At the same time, my own trail was getting harder to ignore. The same address, the same kind of correspondence, the same business pattern, then another match. This wasn't just a familiar name anymore. Whitmore was connected to something here. I just didn't know how far it went. So I called Claude Glenn, the postal inspector I'd met in Iowa. I told him what I'd found, the names, the address, the correspondence. He checked his old notes while we spoke. Then he passed the information to investigators who could verify it locally. And they did. They checked the records, then checked them again. Meanwhile, the miners kept moving. Ahead of them was Logan County. Sheriff Don Chafin was already reading the reports, talking with his people, and preparing for what might come next. Two different trails were moving at the same time, one through the mountains, the other through paper. By the end of August, the miners had reached Blair Mountain. And while reports kept coming into Charleston, the Whitmore file kept moving too. Glenn checked his records. The local investigators checked theirs. One detail, then another, kept matching. The trail was getting close. Then federal troops arrived. That changed everything. The story had gone beyond West Virginia. Now, Washington was involved. The miners began coming down from the mountains. Groups broke apart. Men started heading home. That night, I checked the papers one more time. Whitmore was caught. But the trail wasn't finished. There was still something there, a mark, a connection, something bigger than one man. I sent Burns a message, packed my things, and followed my next assignment east. New Jersey, Atlantic City. After West Virginia, I expected something quieter. I was wrong.